10, 7, 5 by Bill. That's par for the course. I'd rather get photo bombed than food bombed.
Test, 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 test.
That laugh.
Test. Test says, well, let's get started. So, good morning, everyone. How are y'all doing this cold winter day? So, my name is Pamela Frederick, and I am currently the coordinator for SCMA Diversity Excellence Mentor Program, and I am also from one of the islands of Micronesia. Yay! And for the Diversity Mentor Program, we pretty much mentor new EOU students and also LaCran High School students to kind of guide them through college and also prepare them for college life. So I would like to welcome you all to the 8th annual Celebrate, Educate, and Appreciate Diversity Conference here at EOU. We will begin by taking a few moments to humbly acknowledge the original inhabitants of the land in which Eastern Oregon University is born. The Cayuse, Umatilla, Walla Walla, Nez Perce, Shoshone Bannock, and as well the Burns Paiute people. We celebrate their traditions, languages, and stories. We acknowledge their continuing connection to land, water, and community, and pay our respects to these original custodians of Northeastern Oregon.
Morning, everyone. My name is Cooper Shaw.
I'm a part of the Multicultural Center staff. I am a EOU track athlete here, and I'm also part of the 2019 C.E.A.D Conference Planning Committee. We want to just take this moment to recognize that February is Black History Month, and Black History Month is a significant time in our history as we remember the important contributions and achievements of African Americans throughout our nation's history.
Before we begin with the keynote, we have a few remarks and announcements to make. And first, there is an insert in your programs with upcoming events. One in particular is the International Dinner and Show next week, Friday, which is put together by International Student Association. We have tickets at the registration table if you would like to purchase some. Also, EOU is doing the annual food drive, and we encourage you all to participate. There are boxes all in every building of the campus that you can bring your donations to. And other ways that you can donate include burial deductions, cash donation, and others listed in your flyer. If you brought a non-perishable food item today, I thank you so much. For those people who stated that they have special dietary needs, you have a sticker on your name tag. And if you do have that, when during lunch, please pick up your lunch at the registration table. Thank you.
The C.E.A.D conference is funded primarily by the Student Council of Multicultural Affairs. This is the student fee-funded unit that is made up of a group of EOU student leaders who serve as advocates for diversity, multicultural education, as well as awareness. We are committed to sharing our students' cultures, identities, and experiences within EOU, advocating for their needs and furthering diversity and inclusion. We are thrilled to provide this opportunity for you to all learn more about diversity and the role each of us play to help move this type of work forward for the betterment of our campus. It is made possible with the help of many people and sponsors, and we would like to take the time to thank and recognize these groups who help make this conference possible. EOU Diversity Committee, ASEOU Student Fee Committee, EOU Vending Committee, EOU Student Diversity and Inclusion, Oregon Humanities. In addition, we thank Sorbonauts for their continued support in giving us free coffee every year for this conference, Sodexo for their refreshments this morning, Raoul's Taquiera, and GC Fusion for lunch today. We also want to thank our fellow students, staff, and volunteers. And of course, we thank our honored guests, keynote speaker, and workshop presenters for coming to share new knowledge and information for all of us. We want to give a special shout out to our staff and students from our peer institutions in Eastern Oregon. Let's give it up to our guests from Treasure Valley Community College and Blue Mountain Community College. Most of all, I want to thank you for coming to take this time to attend this year's 8th annual C.E.A.D conference, especially with it being a cold winter day like it is. Thank you all for weathering the roads and coming to spend the day to learn about diversity and inclusion with all of us.
At this time, I would like to quickly go over the schedule for the day. We will begin this morning with our wonderful keynote speaker, Bill Imada. Then there will be 2 workshop sessions. Session 1 starts immediately after our keynote speaker at 10 a.m. And session 2 will start at 12:35 p.m. There will be 4 workshops available for you to choose from during each session. All workshop classrooms are on the east side of this building. After session 1 at 11:35 a.m., there will be a short 30-minute break where you can get lunch. We encourage you to pick your session to workshop and bring your lunch to the classroom where the workshop will be at, so you can get a seat and be comfortable before session 2. And after second session at 1:40 p.m., we will all meet here for a short 20-minute thank you and closing session. we have a number of great workshops for you all today. If you get to a workshop and it is full, please choose a second option.
We would like to highlight the community agreements on your program. Our hope is these agreements will establish a framework to ensure openness, maximize participation, and respectful dialogue. Please use these as guiding principles as you go throughout the day. Some things I would like to challenge you with as you participate in the workshops are being fully present. This means being willing to not check your phone and to give the workshop speaker their full attention in order to optimize this opportunity.
Also, pay attention to your reactions. Watch your own emotions and pay attention to how it may affect how you receive new information. When something triggers us in a way that may not be comfortable, we often miss critical parts of what is being said. If what is being said creates an emotional response in you, be extra aware and challenge yourself to listen and be open-minded to hearing the full intent and meaning of what is being shared. Also, ask questions, engage in dialogue, network, and connect with someone you do not already know. I challenge you to make new friends, but most of all, I want you all to have fun today.
Today, I have the privilege and honor of introducing our keynote speaker for this year's 2019 C.E.A.D conference, Bill Imada. Bill Imada is the founder, chairman, and chief connectivity officer of IW Group, a minority-owned and operated communications firm based in Los Angeles. For nearly 3 decades, Bill and his company have served as advisors and specialists in the growing multicultural markets in the United States and abroad. IW Group works with top domestic and international brands, including Coca-Cola, Lexus, McDonald's, Walmart stores, Walt Disney, Wells Fargo, and a lot more. Bill's extensive knowledge and expertise includes crisis management, ethnic marketing, multicultural media relations, partnership marketing, and transcultural training. He is active in several communities and is responsible for co-founding 3 unique national organizations. These include the Asian and Pacific Islander American Scholarship Fund, a national organization devoted to providing educational opportunities for historically disadvantaged students, the Asian and Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship, which advocates for their needs, interests, and aspirations of small business owners, entrepreneurs, and corporate leaders of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander American heritage. And most recently, the National Millennial Community, a social movement to effectively change the conversation about millennials in the US and abroad. Bill helped create a NMC group at EOU with others on campus, which has been active for a few years now. Bill also serves on a wide array of boards and advisory councils, including the Advertising Educational Foundation, Center of Asian American Media, Coalition for Asian Pacifics in Entertainment, National Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship, Public Broadcasting Service, and the PBS Foundation. He also serves in an advisory capacity for Nielsen University of Florida, University of Southern California, and Western Connecticut State University. Bill was appointed by former President Barack Obama to serve as a member of the President's Advisory Commission of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. He is a graduate from California State University Northridge and graduated from Koros Foundation Asian Fellows Program and earned a certificate from the Tuck School of Business. He has received numerous awards and recognitions, including the Lifetime Achievement Award for Add Color and Distinguished Alumni of the Year by California State University, Northridge. Most recently, Bill received an honorary doctorate from Anaheim University for his contributions in multicultural marketing and public relations. We're incredibly pleased to have Bill Imada with us here today. Let's all give him a warm welcome from Eastern Oregon University.
You guys did a great job with this conference. And I especially want to thank Cooper for delivering my keynote speech. Thank you so much. So part of my job today is to try to keep you awake, but I think you've had plenty of coffee. I was told to talk for an hour, and I said, nobody delivers a keynote speech for an hour. So I'm going to give you a shorter presentation. Some of you have heard this, so I apologize in advance. But I want to say thank you to the entire Eastern Oregon University community and all the people that have arrived from all different parts of the country. And for those of you who have had to master Cabbage Hill, you get extra points for that. I decided to go through Boise, through Baker City, and not try to do Cabbage Hill. The last time I tried to do Cabbage Hill, I spent 3 days in Pendleton. So for all of you that came from out of town, thank you so much. I also want to say thank you. President Insco is here, and Provost Witt is here, and a lot of other people from the community. So thank you for all being here. And I do have to say that it makes a really strong statement when the president of the university attends an event like this. So you should be very proud that you have a president that supports what you're doing. So President Insco, thank you for being here. So I want to make sure, because we have a lot of students in this audience, that you use this hashtag today, because I want to make sure that you put this on the map all around the country. And do me a favor, let's trend today about this conference. So if you could use this hashtag during the course of the day, that would be great, because I want everyone to know that this conference is happening right here in the Grand Oregon. But I also want to say that the theme of my presentation today is called Taste the Street, and I'll eventually get to the reason for that. And some of you have seen this, so I apologize in advance. But the 3 key things I'm going to leave you with today is your journey and my journey. The second one is that you should change the conversation about diversity, inclusion, and representation in this country. And the last comment I want to make is we can learn from every single person we meet, regardless of their background, their experience, and their knowledge. So keep those in mind. The journey, changing the conversation, and making sure that we understand that everyone we meet, we can learn something from that person. So let's move on. So one thing I want to do is make sure that you stay current. And it's not always easy to stay current, but you're going to learn a lot of things today. So as Cooper and Pamela said, absorb as much as you can, stay open to ideas, and make sure you participate in meaningful ways. So first thing I want to mention is that nobody needs to worry about getting from point A to point B with a straight line. And Phil Knight from Nike once said, there is no finish line. And frankly, if we're talking about diversity and inclusion, there won't be any finish line, because a lot of people make decisions in different ways. And a lot of people will move this direction or that direction. Many of your careers will be a lot like this. So even if you're a student and you're worried about graduation and work, it doesn't matter if you get the perfect job the first time, or if it takes you 2 or 3 or 4 years to get there. My comment to you is just enjoy the journey, because I'll tell you my life is completely crazy. And so when I was talking to Justin Shin from Career Services, he said, Bill, talk a little bit about your journey. So let me tell you just a little bit about my journey, and I hope you like it. So the very first thing I want to mention is that I was born in Eastern Oregon, in Ontario, in Malheur County. And Malheur County is the poorest county in Oregon. And then my dad and mom decided when I was very, very young that they wanted to move to a different place. And so my brothers and sisters who were at Pioneer Elementary School went kicking and screaming all the way to Los Angeles. So my journey went from a small town to a very large city. And to be perfectly honest, when I got to this big city, I was lost, and all the kids picked on me because I was some hee-haw hick from Ontario, Oregon, and it was really hard to adjust from going from a small town to a very large city. But ultimately, I found my voice, and these icons here are actually part of my journey. So the first thing I got a job when I was in high school was at KFC. So I knew how to make chicken right. And then I took a bunch of various jobs. So for the people here that always worry about millennials and Gen Z's job hunting, don't worry. I job hunted a lot, and job hunted here and job jumped here. And eventually I decided I didn't want to go to college. So I told my parents, I'm not going to college. And my parents said, what? I said, I don't want to go to college. My brothers went to University of Southern California. I used to call it the University of Spoiled Children. And my sister went to Cal State Long Beach, and I told my parents, I'm going to choose a different path. And my parents said, there is no way you're going to not go to school. So I decided I'm going to go as far away from my parents as possible. So I picked Humboldt State, California. Way up in Northern California, I got accepted, and then I couldn't get into the dorms. So I said, oh God, what do I do next? And so Cal State Northridge was nearby, and so I said, I guess I can go to Cal State Northridge. So I went to Cal State Northridge and ended up loving it. But I always felt, when I was at Cal State Northridge, that UCLA and USC and Stanford and Berkeley were always casting shadows on Cal State Northridge, and we used to call it Cal State Nowhere, because everybody else seemed to get more light than we did. And so I've come to appreciate state universities and colleges and places that often get overlooked. And so I made a promise to myself when I went to Cal State Northridge that if I ever got into a position to help people, I'm going to do it. Because UCLA and USC, they were getting all the money and all the attention, and Cal State Northridge wasn't. And so that's part of the reason why I'm here. The other thing I wanted to mention is that when I was in college, I wanted to work for this big ad agency. It was called McCann. And I applied for a job at this company, and I came in second place. But this is going to factor in the story a little later on, but if you ever watched the show Mad Men, they talk about McCann a lot. And it was started by Irish Americans, so they called it the Mix, which is kind of a derogatory term for Irish people, but that's what they called them back then, because everyone kind of went through this discrimination and process when they first arrived in this country, and a lot of people picked on Italians and they picked on the Irish, and so when the Irish opened up this agency, then a lot of people made fun of this agency. But I wanted to work for this company, and I didn't get picked, so I ended up going through a lot of different processes. I went into HR. I left college early to take the dream job that I thought would be interesting, and that company went bankrupt. I had to lay off 800 people, and I went, HR is not for me. I went into executive search and made some good money, but I didn't like executive search. I went into politics, but I didn't like politics either, so I decided I'm going to go back to what I feel most comfortable doing, and that's marketing. So I went to go apply for a variety of jobs, and nobody would hire me because I was 27 years old. And they said 27 was too old. And so one of the companies finally said, we'll give you a job on a temp to perm basis. And it's a very, very large ad agency. I went to that ad agency, and I walked in, and I was the only Asian American in the entire company. And then there was one other person of color, and it was a Latino who worked in the mailroom. But he and I became very, very close friends. And during the course of the year that I was working there, I got very, very comfortable, met a lot of people, engaged with a lot of people. And one day, the president of the agency walks up to me and says, Bill, I have a great project for you, and here it is. And I said, well, what is that project? And he goes, Anheuser-Busch asked us if we had $500,000, how would we reach Asian Americans? And I said, so why are you asking me? And he goes, you're Asian, right? And there's no one else in the company that looks like you. You're perfect for this. I said, I don't know anything about Asians. And he said, but you want to take on the assignment? And I said, well, I guess there's nobody else that can do this, so I'll be happy to take on the project. When is it due? A day and a half. I said, a day and a half? And he goes, well, we've had it for a couple of weeks, but nobody wanted to take it on. So we figured that you'll take it on? And I said, great. So anyways, I took it on. A bunch of us worked day and night on this presentation. And we get on the plane to fly to Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis. And while we're on the plane, we realized that our strategy is completely off. PowerPoints and all these things, we're going to fix it. And we said, well, when we land in St. Louis, we're going to fix our presentation, and we're going to go in to Anheuser-Busch and blow them away. Well, guess what happened? Snow. One of the biggest snowstorms that St. Louis has ever had, and we got delayed. So we only had 40 minutes when we landed to get to Anheuser-Busch. And what we had done on the airplane was we got a bunch of papers and napkins, and we started drawing our strategy out because we were off on strategy, and we decided to make a decision that we would present using napkins and scraps of paper. So when we got to Anheuser-Busch, the executive assistant comes out and says, Mr. Imada, where's your presentation? Do you have a deck? Do you have a handout? And I said, no, it's all in my briefcase. And as soon as the executive VP comes out, I start pulling out the napkins. The executive assistant says, Mr. Imada, what is that? I said, it's our presentation. And he goes, what? Napkins, pieces of paper? That one has a coffee stain, by the way. And I said, and the executive assistant said, let Bill present. So we got up and said, well, if Asian Americans were targeted by Anheuser-Busch, you should make a T-shirt. And the T-shirt would look like this. And by the way, Asians love golf, and so we're perpetuating all these stereotypes. And one day, Asians are going to be skiing on one ski. And we think these are some of the things that you might want to think about. And the executive vice president said, well, talk to me more about skiing. So we had this great conversation, and we finished. And as we were walking out, the executive assistant said, Mr. Imada, there is no way in H you're going to be working for our company. How dare you insult your agency and us by presenting on napkins and pieces of paper? You will not get our business, and you should be ashamed. I go back to the office, and we're all dejected. A day or two later, I get a phone call from the executive vice president from Anheuser-Busch, and he says, Mr. Imada, congratulations. You've won our business. And I was like overjoyed, bouncing up and down, running up and down the hallways. And the president of the agency says, what's going on, Bill? I said, we just won. We are going to be the Anheuser-Busch agency for the Asian American market. And he said, what? You need to call him up right now and resign. And I said, I beg your pardon? You need to call him up and resign right now. And I said, why? We have a conflict. We represent another beer company. I said, you got to be kidding. Why would you put us through this process knowing that we had a conflict? Well, frankly, Bill, I didn't think you guys would win. So I had to call the executive of Anheuser-Busch and say, Mr. Aguirre, I'm really sorry we wasted your time, but we can't represent you. And he said, why not? I said, because we have a conflict of interest with another beer company, and I didn't realize that when we pitched, so I really am sorry. And he goes, well, Bill, why don't you start your own company? I said, I'm not going to start my own company. I was in HR. I went into executive recruiting. I worked in politics, and I made a lot of dumb decisions. And I had a lot of student debt. Can you guys all relate? $80,000 in college debt and really bad entrepreneurship decisions. He goes, so $80,000 is preventing you from starting a company? And I said, yeah. And he said, that's really too bad. And I said, Mr. Aguirre, I'm so sorry I wasted your time. Please forgive us. And he said, no problem. And he hung up. And then I walk in the next day, and I get a FedEx. And it's a FedEx from Anheuser-Busch, and there's an $80,000 check in it. And it said, get your ass in gear. And I said, what is this $80,000 check doing from Anheuser-Busch? So I called up Mr. Aguirre and said, Mr. Aguirre, didn't I just tell you we can't represent Anheuser-Busch? Why would you send me an $80,000 check? And he said, Mr. Imada, in our conversation, you said you were $80,000 in debt. Your debt is covered. I said, well, Mr. Aguirre, it was actually $1 million. And I told Mr. Aguirre, I didn't say that. But I told Mr. Aguirre, I'm really sorry, but I do not want to be another entrepreneur. I don't want to deal with the risk. Because, Mr. Imada, I just covered your debt. What risk is there for you? I said, let me think about it. So as soon as I hung up, I quit. And I started IW Group, and Anheuser-Busch became our first client. So that's how IW Group got started. And to go back to this, remember I told you I wanted to work for McCann? Well, probably about a dozen years later, guess who bought my company? And who serves on my board of directors? The president of McCann Erickson. So even if you don't get what you want the first time, don't give up, because you might get what you want. So that's enough about me. But I wanted to just mention a couple of things. I want you to think about changing this conversation. And some of you have seen this before, so I apologize for that. But when I was traveling around, I was at a university in San Francisco, and I taught a class with a large number of international students. and a handful of American students, and I was shocked when I walked in the room. It was a Communications 101 class. And as I looked around the room, I said, wow, there's a lot of diversity in this room. I said, well, where are you from? I'm from Egypt, Mr. Imada. Where are you from? I'm from India. Where are you from? Korea. Where are you from? Russia. Where are you from? Germany. Where are you from? Taiwan. I went, why are there so many international students in this class taking American communications? And somebody said, we have trouble talking to American people. They're very strange and difficult to talk to. So that's why we're here. I said, well, what are you talking about right now in class? And they go, idioms. I said, idioms? Well, what about idioms? They go, American idioms. Americans have so much slang in their language, and idioms are just confounding us. I said, okay, let's have a conversation about idioms. Go, Mr. Imada, this Indian guy raises his hand and says, Mr. Imada, why do Americans say we should think outside of the box? Have you heard that term before? Why do we say think outside of the box? And how many of you have heard that? You're in meetings. We need out-of-the-box thinking. Why do we say that? Yeah, so a lot of times, I was telling this Indian student, sometimes you get into a little bit of a funk. You're with students or in your classrooms or in your businesses, and you're with a bunch of people that you're with all the time, and the executives come up and say, you know what? We're a little bit inward focused. We need a little bit of out-of-box thinking because we're going to get more creative if we're thinking outside of the box. So I was explaining this to the Indian guy, and the Indian guy says, Mr. Imada, where did that box come from? Did they buy it at Walmart? Did they construct this box? And what do they do with the box once they're finished with it? Do they repurpose it and reuse it? And why do they have a box in the conversation anyways? I'm not quite sure where that's coming from. And I said, okay, well, what does it mean to you? And he said, why do Americans believe that the best ideas are somewhere else? Why don't Americans believe that they can find inspiration from a place like Eastern Oregon University? Why do they believe that they have to go outside to get everything? Why do they hire employees, millennials and Gen Z, but never ask them for their opinions and only talk to each other at the top? Why can't people think in the box first and then step out? And I said, that's brilliant. So guess what? My conversation now is think in the box, then step out, and then come back. And it's okay to think in the box. And if anybody tells you that you should think outside of the box, I would hiss. Because sometimes the best ideas are right here in La Grande, Oregon, among all of you. So I want you to believe that you can do a lot of things and that you can create a lot of new and purposeful things. Then I have this Japanese student say, hey, Mr. Imada, I'm from Japan, and you're Japanese. And I said, yeah, I'm Japanese. And he said, you probably understand this. Mr. Imada, why do Americans say we shouldn't reinvent the wheel? Chris, why do we say that? Have you heard that term? Let's not reinvent the wheel. Yeah, exactly. So I was explaining to this Japanese guy, so Americans believe that once a process is in place and it works, we don't bother going back to it because it's too much time and investment and resources to do it. So if we have a product that works or an advertising campaign that works or something that we love that works, and a lot of companies don't want to invest the time or the energy to do it all over again. And the man says to me, Mr. Imada, I moved to the United States of America for one reason. America is the land of opportunity. I don't have that opportunity in Japan. And if Americans can reinvent a wheel and make it better, why wouldn't they? And I went, that's brilliant. So ladies and gentlemen, it's okay to reinvent wheels. If you can come up with a better process, if you can come up with a better idea, we've advanced wheels, and if you could find a better wheel or a better process, then we should do it. And then I get to this person, a person from Pakistan. He goes, Mr. Imada, why do Americans believe we should level the playing field? Have you heard that term before? Level the playing field? Anybody? Nobody wants to raise their hand because they're worried I'm going to call them. Yes, why do we say that? That we need to level the playing field. Yeah, to give everyone, because America is a land of equal opportunity. So I was explaining that, we want to try to have a level playing field so everyone could prosper in our country. And this guy from Pakistan said, Mr. Imada, we don't have level playing fields in Pakistan. Sometimes they're off level, sometimes they're this way, sometimes they're short, sometimes they're long, but we improvise, and we figure out a way to play on that field. And why do Americans think that everything is going to be level? Because things will never be level in life. And I will tell you that's going to be the challenge for all of us in diversity, is that we'd like to level the playing field, but in life, things don't always are level. And so the challenge for us moving forward is trying to get to a level field, but in most cases, people don't. So if you encounter an unlevel playing field, use that as an opportunity to figure out how to navigate that. And for me, that would be a skateboard. And then lastly, this was my favorite. The German guy and the Taiwanese guy were sitting in the back of the room, and they came up with 3 pages of American idioms that they didn't understand. And I went, oh, God. So some of you have heard this story before, but so they bring up their papers, and I said, we don't have time to go through all of these, so why don't you tell me your first one? He said, Mr. Imada, why do black people have a special shopping day called Black Friday? And why do white people, Asian people, and Latinos and other people get to shop on that same day? Black people should have 1 hour lead time so they can get the bargains, but for some reason, America just has this need to let everybody shop, but if you're going to have Black Friday, then it seems to me that black people should have an advantage. And by the way, is there a Brown Friday? And I said, can we not go there? And then they said, okay, Mr. Imada, why do people say you got to walk the walk and talk the talk? Have you heard that term? Why do we say it? Give me a hand here. Why do we say it? Who wants to help me out here? Exactly. So if you hear me up here saying you got to do this, and I do something different, you're going to be pissed, right? So a lot of times when people are up here telling you got to do this, you got to lead this life, you got to do this process, and we do something opposite, we're not walking the walk or talking the talk, we're walking the talk. And so I was trying to explain this to the Chinese and German student in the class, and the Chinese student says to me, Mr. Imada, why do Americans have to walk and talk? Why can't they just walk and shut up? Why do they have to talk about everything in gross detail? Why do they have to explain things with words? So my example for that, and I don't want to take up too much time, is this my example. So when you go to a restaurant in La Grande, maybe it's Mamacita's, and you're recognized by the owner will come out and, what's your name? Anna, and say, Anna, it's so great to see you. We just saw you here last week. Obviously, you have a little extra dollars on your student money, but we have a really great meal for you planned today. In fact, we have this salmon that is flown in fresh from Lockerbie, Scotland. And by the way, we can do this salmon in a number of ways. Sushi grade, because it's so good. But if you don't like sushi, no problem. We can steam it, put a little bit of oil on it and cilantro. It tastes really good. Oh, fried salmon? Who doesn't like fried salmon? It's amazing, right? Or we're in the Pacific Northwest. You know how people in Seattle like their salmon? They put it on an apple wooden plank, stick it in the oven. The apple wooden plank seeps into the fish. It's delicious. Or we could poach it if you're on a diet and you're a little bit worried about that. The Taiwanese guy said, Mr. Imada, I'm like this in the restaurant. I was lost on the first one. I said, well, tell us what you do in your restaurant. Well, if you go to any decent Chinese restaurant in any big city, what do you see swimming in the fish tank? Fish. And what's that fish? Your dinner. So if you go to a really good Chinese restaurant, guess what they do with the fish? You see it swimming in the tank, no goldfish. They'll bring out the fish, and guess what it's doing? Do I have to tell you it's fresh? Do I have to tell you it's whole? Do you know there's head and tails on there? So in some cases in diversity, if you can't explain things with words, do things with action. And so that was the point that this gentleman wanted to make, is sometimes if you talk, you're not listening. And if you're not listening, you can't see. If you're not watching and paying attention, then you can't communicate with some people that may not be able to communicate in the same way that you would like. So if you can't talk about it, then show people what you can do. Okay, I'm going to wrap up, but I want to let you know that we learn something from every single person we meet, even persons that may be contrary to our own beliefs and values. And I think that most people, through their experiences and their beliefs and their ideas, are all good people, and they don't necessarily mean to be hurtful. But one of the key people since it's Black History Month is Maya Angelou, the late poet. And one of the things she said is, nothing works unless you do. And so if we're going to be involved in celebrating diversity and educating others and advancing this discussion, then we've all got to work at it every single day. And then Catherine Barchetti. She was an Italian-American who wanted to open a retail empire in Pittsburgh, but she couldn't, because every time she tried to open something in retail, she was blocked by the establishment, mostly men that were running retail at that time. But she finally found her path and opened a retail organization. And one of her mantras is, make a customer, not a sale. So if you're going to be good in diversity, good inclusion, then you want to talk to people and make them feel like they're engaged, that they're a customer. Sam Walton. A lot of people don't like Sam Walton. He started Walmart. But one thing that Sam Walton said, he started off as a small business, is swim upstream. Go against conventional wisdom. And so if you feel like you have to be part of the tide, then you really aren't in a diverse and inclusive environment. If you have a diverse opinion, you should express it and feel comfortable expressing it. And here in diversity, we need to be open to every single idea that we come across and have the ability to understand and discuss it. And then I love the Latinx community. And I say this at the last EOU meeting, and I'm not exactly sure who in the community said it, but they say, donde comen cinco comen seis. Does anybody know what that means? Shout it out for me. If you could feed 5, you could feed 6. If you could feed 6 people at your table, you could feed 7. If you could feed 7 people at your table, you could feed 8. And why is that important to someone like me and to you? Is that we should always leave room at our table for new ideas and for different thinking. And that's what I love about Latinx culture, is that they have these kinds of wonderful stories. Abraham Lincoln, he once said, if you want to predict the future, create it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to predict the future and you want to create a more diverse, just, creative, and inclusive society, you've got to create it from this point on. And so if you're going to take anything away from this conference today, find ways to create a better future, not only for all of you, but for everyone else that you touch. And I want to end with a couple more. Booker T. Washington from the Tuskegee Institute. If you want to lift yourself up, lift up someone else. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our responsibility, to lift up other people. As we succeed or as we go through our journeys, finding ways to lift people up. And lastly, Ben Nighthorse Campbell, Northern Cheyenne, former congressman from the state of Colorado. His quote is, there's but one secret to success: never give up. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to be good in diversity and inclusion, you cannot give up, because the journey is ongoing. And I want to end with just one last thing. And I use this for a reason, because this is my mea culpa to a young woman who came up to me after the class and said, Mr. Imada, you're an amazing marketer. I need your help. And I said, what do you need? She goes, I'm going to open a restaurant in America, my new adopted town. And I said, well, what are you going to call this restaurant? And she's going to have all the flavors of Vietnam are going to be in this restaurant. What is the name of the restaurant? Taste of Saigon Street. And my comment to her was, that's gross. Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh City, is dirty. It smells bad. There's so much noise pollution. And I don't think Americans are going to like the idea of licking a street. I think you need to change the name of the company. And she said, Mr. Imada, I want to bring the flavors of my country to America. The noise that you hear on the streets of Saigon is music to my ears. The smells that you smell on the streets of my city are perfume. I want to get people to taste the flavor of my culture. And that's why I want to call it Taste of Saigon Street. And I said, I apologize. Call it whatever you'd like, because I now feel it and see it and taste it myself. So instead of saying walk the walk and talk the talk, I want you all to say, taste the street. Thank you so much.
Test. Wow. Thank you, Bill Imada, for a great keynote speech. We would like to thank you and present this small gift as a token of our appreciation. Can I please get another round of applause? Okay, so it is time. So we hope you have selected a workshop that you want to go for the first session. And remember, have fun today. So see y'all.